Welcome everybody to Europeana's webinar today, organized by the Europeana Impact Community. My name is Nienke van Schavenbeke and I'm the chair of the Impact Community Steering Group, and I'm happy to chair this webinar today that actually derived from an idea that within the steering group we had already a while back. We were thinking of organizing this webinar also as part of the Europeana Tech Community. So it's actually a nice collaboration between the European Impact Community and the European Tech Community, and obviously impact design in the aggregation experience in the Europeana network of bringing all our digitized cultural heritage from all across Europe together, and how can we do that in an impactful way is of course a timely and important topic that's all on our radar all the time. So I think that today we are bringing you a lovely program with very nice, diverse group of speakers. And I'd love to all encourage you to ask your questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A button down below in the Zoom. I'm asking my colleague Tamara at Europeana to go to the next slides, because then I can introduce also the plan for today. So the plan for today is to have three lovely speakers sharing with you their experience and their expertise working with the Impact Playbook. Firstly, Stephanie Götsch from the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek, the German digital library, forever standing partner of Europeana, and she will share her experiences of working with the Impact Playbook from a museum desk perspective. Antonio Davide from Cultura Italia, our dedicated Italian aggregator, will share his experience working with the Playbook. And Jason Evans from the National Library of Wales will share his experience and his perspective also from working with the Playbook within the library in Wales. There's room for questions. So after each speaker finishes their presentation, feel free to ask their questions. I will monitor the Q&A and the chat and help them ask questions to the speakers. And at the end, we have a panel discussion where we can also, where there's also room to ask questions across the board. So this is the idea for today. Tamara, can you click through to the next slide? Of course, at Europeana, so there are community engagement guidelines that we take very seriously, and we also want to share them with you here. So have a read. It comes down to that everybody can speak up freely, also when you feel like a boundary is crossed. So and be respectful and kind to one another in your conversation. So thank you for reading this through a little bit and taking that mindset on. Next slide, please. So again, questions and discussion, we very much encourage that and so please use the chat and the Q&A feature below. And then I move on to the next slide, and that will probably say, let's start. Let's get started. So, I would like to start today with Stephanie Götsch from the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek, the German digital library, and ask her to share with us how she used the impact design in her work at the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek. So I'm going to check if you're all set to share your screen and your slides.
You can see my presentation and you can hear me? Perfect. Okay. Yes, so many thanks for having me and the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Stephanie Götsch. I work at the museum desk of the German Digital Library. And I'm part of a team, so I'm part of a big working group, and I'm speaking on behalf of them. So I will introduce this working group in some slides, but yeah, to let you know. So I would like to talk about the how the Europeana Impact Playbook helped us to develop recommendations for cultural heritage metadata. I would like to give you a quick overview. First, I would like to give you the background of this work. Then I would like to continue with why we were using the Impact Playbook and how did we use it. And in the end, I would like to give you some impressions about the outcome, the minimum record recommendation. So the background of this work, we as a team at the museum desk realized that the requirements regarding the technical recommendations on metadata are complicated and hard to understand for the museum preparing their data for data delivery to the German Digital Library. And through informal conversations with members of museum associations, we found out that there's the need for some help and some support. And we found out that we have similar objectives. So we thought that we would need a recommendation that support museums and collections with the online publication of their object data. We would also need a recommendation that communicates relevant standards at a low threshold approach. For example, Lido compatibility. Lido is a metadata scheme that we use at the German Digital Library to bring in the data from museums. We also wanted to raise awareness for data quality. And in the end, we would like also to facilitate the integration of authority files and controlled vocabularies. So these were the objectives. And also we would like to encourage museum professionals to consider the FAIR and the CARE principles, which are shown here and which are really important for online publication, that the museum data is findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, to name the FAIR principles, but also to consider the CARE principles that say promote collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. But of course, these FAIR and CARE principles are somehow abstract, and we wanted to develop something that museums consider these principles. So, as I said, through informal conversations with colleagues from the museum associations and the federal states of Germany, but also conversations with aggregators such as DigiCult or Digis, we found out that we should join forces and develop a working group where we can work together on such a recommendation that would support museums while cataloging and publishing their data in portals such as German Digital Library or Europeana. And the working group was formed. And as I said, I'm speaking on behalf of all these members here shown. So why did we use the impact playbook? First of all, I have to say that the initial idea for using the impact playbook came from my dear colleague, Chiara Macchini. She's not here today because she's on maternity leave. But as I said, it was her initial idea, and the working group was hooked. But why did we use it? So in the beginning, we were thinking, for whom is this recommendation? And the impact playbook is aimed precisely at projects that have to do with digital cultural heritage, that put the stakeholder at the center. So for us, it seemed to be a fitting source of inspiration. And entering the playbook, we started with phase 1, which focuses on the impact design. And it seemed especially helpful for answering the question, for whom? So how did we use the playbook? The first step we took was using the change pathway. I have the change pathway here on my slide, and over 15 minutes in a collaborative document, members of our working group were asked to fill out each of the headings. And I would like to share some results of this collaborative working together. So we identified 4 groups of stakeholders. So the first group are the users of the recommendation, museum professionals and museum consultants. The second stakeholder group would be the disseminators, such as providers of professional training, academia, museum associations, and boards. The third stakeholder group we identified are the software providers in charge of implementing the recommendation. And most important maybe in this bubble are the portal providers, the research community, and the general public. Yeah, we also identified important resources that we would need. There's to say time, also the Wiki Confluence we worked with, as it's a workspace and a publication platform at the same time. Since we're a big group of different professionals, we all bring in our own experience, our own networks, and in the end, also some financial resources are important, for example, to do business trips. We also identified a long list of activities. Here are some activities that we defined. First of all, we need to develop and publish the minimum record recommendation, but also incorporate the minimum recommendation in training for documentaries, registrar, museologists, curators. Yeah, there are a lot of activities. I would like to skip all the activities, but I would just like to let you know that this was sort of a plan that, we based on. What are the outputs? First of all, the minimum record recommendation as a handout. So this was a really important output. Also, we were thinking about adaptable and extensible guidelines. We also plan to do videos and tools and set up a register of important platforms and interesting software. Then also we had to think about the short-term outcomes, and there we saw the more active players in digital cataloging, also networking of stakeholders. So the different stakeholders groups would get in contact, such as museum staff or software providers, and long-term outcomes would be self-confidence in being a community, like a community of museum staff, but also people from academia coming all together. Another long-term outcome would be the minimum recommendation as part of every degree program, training course for scientific documentation in museums. You can see it's a long-term outcome that we were thinking about, but also were we thinking about that the minimum record recommendation is taking into account in the development of new cataloging software, or is taken into account for further development of existing software. And we were also thinking of better networking of data and a better data exchange. Also, a consensus on quality criteria for documentation would be one important long-term outcome, but also to promote the digital visibility of museums and their collections, through the help of online publication on portals such as German Digital Library or Europeana, and in the end, to take away museums' fear of portals. And what is the impact of all of these? And first of all, we identified that improving data quality is one of the most important impacts that this recommendation is focused on. Also, we wanted to simplify data deliveries to cultural portals. We also want to encourage a more conscious use of authority files and controlled vocabularies. And we also want to data from museums to be found and reused online. So this is the impact. Step 2, after this change pathway, we took the results, we did a little assessment, and then we try to work in 2 groups. So we set up 2 subgroups. Group 1 was the analysis group, which analyzes the existing standards and the development of our own recommendation based on these standards. And the second group, the impact group, was focused on the stakeholders and what are their needs and how can we meet them. And the change pathway was a compass for all the time we were working in these groups. So we touched base by having a look at our change pathway. That was a huge help. In step 3, we used the empathy map. So first, we draft a list of data elements which are most important for the online publication. And we sent this first draft to representatives of the stakeholder groups, and we asked them for their feedback. And we got really helpful feedback back from them, and we worked it into the beta version of the recommendation, which was published in October 2023. And in need of the support of the software providers, we decided to conduct interviews with these software providers. We approached the leading providers in Germany and asked them to do this interview. And the inspiration for these interviews came by looking at the empathy map, because we asked ourselves, what do the software providers need from us? What do they think, and what do they want to say to us? So we also needed their feedback. And yeah, we found that interviews would be a perfect fit to learn more about the pains and gains of the recommendation. So we conducted these interviews, and the feedback we got were put into the minimum record recommendation for museums and collections. This is the outcome of working with the playbook. And we published the first full version this year in May, so it's very new, and we're very proud and happy that it's online now. And here you can see the Confluence is the platform we're working with, and here you can see the German version of the minimal record recommendation. You can also see the address of the website, so you're invited to surf through it. What are the next steps for our working group? We as a working group are thinking about making the recommendation available to international museum professionals. So now the next big step is to translate the recommendation into English. This is a draft I'm showing here with you, but it's not online yet. We're still working on it. And yeah, we would like to get in touch and to do exchange work with comparable working groups in other countries. So I'm also happy to speak to you here. I'm also really curious what you think about our work. If you have any further questions or suggestions, please let us know. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. You can scan the QR code if you would like. And that's all I want to say by now. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll give my word back to Nienke. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm giving you applause. I hope that lots of hands will pop up on the screen. Also, thank you so much for presenting this case study. Lovely participants, if you have any questions for Stephanie, please post them in the chat or in the Q&A. And then give people the time to put some questions in there. In the meantime, I have maybe a question for you, Stephanie, from So from two perspectives. So the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek, of course, and the museum desk, dedicated desk for the museum sector, which I think was very beneficial also for executing this work. But the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek is so much wider than only the museum desk. It's also providing other domains with the expertise. Is it some? Will this be will you inspire other people within the Deutsche Digitalbibliothek to also adopt this methodology for other domains? Do you see that is something about that would be helpful?
So I think the other domains are really interesting. Oh, sorry, I can hear myself. Maybe. Thank you, Nike. Yeah, I think the other desks are also or are on their way to find their own recommendations. I think they already developed something like that, but I don't know if it's really comparable to the recommendation we build up. And we're totally open to inspire our colleagues at the German Digital Library. They said that it's an amazing work we did, and yeah, I guess it will be interesting to get an exchange about this topic. But of course, the museum sector with the Lido metadata scheme is a really complicated metadata scheme, which needs a lot of explanation. But also the other metadata schemes used at the German Digital Library are, yeah, complicated.
No, I'm immediately thinking, I love how you've adopted it so that it fits the needs of the museum. So in that sense, making that translation so it can serve the even the international museum community. If you're translating the minimal datensatz into English and other languages, you can open it up to so many more for inspiration. A question about the methodology. So you've taken the impact playbook and you made it your own, right? As in you use it for what you were trying to research. Did everything work smoothly? Did you adjust something, or or could you just take it off the shelf and repurpose it? I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how you experienced working with the playbook to come to this amazing recommendation.
Yes. So what so first of all, it was somehow self-explanatory, so it was easy to dive into, and we were just like picking the resins from the playbook that would fit for our work. There are so many other tools that look amazing and interesting, but for our purpose, it was super cool that we could just select the parts that we would need, and therefore it was a great inspiration. And we were also thinking of how we could involve the tools from the impact playbook for the next phase. So, opening the recommendation to an international audience, or to get an exchange with international museum professionals. But yeah, as I said, we're in a first phase now. But therefore, I could also think about using the change pathway, for example. This was, really inspirational and easy to use. But I know that the playbook is so much more, and it was just
I'm happy to hear that that your experience was also that you could pick and choose and use it to your needs. And I think that's what has always been our ambition and aim. But it's also happy to hear it, because if we come across things that are not working as smoothly as this, we're also open to furthering it and further developing it. So thank you so much, Stephanie. There are not many questions in the chat yet, but they might follow. So, and Stephanie's happy to answer them also in the chat if you want to type it in. So she has access to that. So also you have her contact details. So if later on you would like to explore or learn from her experience, please feel free to reach out, especially museum professionals from other countries. Feel free to reach out to a question from the chat that I would like to immediately address. How will you monitor if your activities and output led to the desired outcomes? That's something that resonates with you, Stephanie?
Shall I?
Yeah, please.
Yes. Yeah, this is a really good question, and we haven't decided yet how we will monitor this, but we have to do evaluation of it, of course. And yeah, I think we set up this newsletter to yeah, to talk to our community, but also to yeah, encourage people to get in touch with us, to send their feedback. And we're promoting the recommendation within the next months on several conferences and workshops. And we try to talk to museums, but also to museum associations to get back feedback, to get some feedback. But yeah, there's still a plan missing, but we will work on that. How to like really assess this yeah, monitoring activities. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you also for the question. Thank you, Stephanie. Then I'll move on to our second speaker of the day, which is Antonio Davide Madonna from Cultura Italia, dedicated Italian aggregator for Europeana. Antonio, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Ninke. Good morning, everyone. I'm Antonio Davide Madonna, and actually I'm a project and technical coordinator at Cultura Italia, the Italian national aggregator. Today I will have a different presentation because it is interesting I want to underline a fact that we worked on Impact Playbook, and it is really interesting the fact that our plan outcomes methodology are really quite closer to the activity carried out by the digital German library. So I'll try today to have a little different approach because I would like to highlight the aspect of the work that struck me most using the Impact Playbook as a guide in order to develop the whole impact process. So before to start, I need to spend just 2 words referred to Cultura Italia because it has a long story, but I will be really quick in just 1 minute. It is a portal devoted to aggregation, but the first version of the project was released in 2005, and the first version of the portal was released in 2008. And of course, it was really different from how it is now. We had a relevant part about about editorials with news about events, exhibition, and so on. But we understood that the core of the portal was the aggregation service and the possibility for the users to find content indexed by author, etc. So starting from the 2012, we started to focus all our activities to the ingestion process. So from a certain point of view, let me say that we started to have a sort of impact because we remodulate our portal based on the user needs. But all the activities that all the change that we made was made at a sort of empiric level. It was not based on a systematic way. So when I have the possibility I got about the information about the impact community. I decided that it was a concrete opportunity for Cultura Italia to work in a systematic and scientific way to adopting the principle of the impact community. So from this point of view, we started to discuss about the possibility to use the impact playbook, adopting it to Cultura Italia. of course, we started to set up the group. We are not a big group of professional at Cultura Italia, but I have to say that we were absolutely lucky I was absolutely lucky from this point of view, because all of them were available to work with the impact principles, and I think that this is a really crucial point for the discussion or to the today discussion. You can have how many people you want to work on impact, but also on all other topics you want. But if they are not able to provide a concrete effort, you will not be able to achieve any result. So don't be scared, and I think that this is a really important for the impact. If your group is a small group of people, it is important that they are really concretely interested to work with it. And in Italy we say meglio pochi che buoni, and the translation is better fewer. But better. So it is a really important aspect, because, as I said, today I want to highlight a concrete experience that we had with the Cultura Italia. So, as a good students, after that we set up the group, we started to study the impact playbook and the 4 phases, and of course we work a lot on the phase 1 and the phase of the design. And I have to say that it is a sort of epiphania, because the phase 1 of the impact playbook contains a lot of useful suggestion, and Stephanie said before, a lot of tools, a lot of recommendation to work in the right way. So the kickoff workshop and the change pathway workshop, to tools, to instrument, to way of work clearly and well expressed into the phase 1, were for us really a crucial moment in order to understand an aspect that we underrated over 10 years, and I have to say, and we did it thanks to impact. So from this point of view, I have to say thanks to impact playbook, because we got the first goal. We understand that we have a big lack related to one of our stakeholders, and these stakeholders are the content providers. It seems to be strange from a certain point of view, but I have to say that as a national aggregator, we are a central point, and we understood, discussing each other, that we have a top-bottom approach, and we have a monodirectional approach. It is a vertical, so the content providers give us the metadata, then we transform it, then we send them to Europeana. But in this case, we understand that the content providers play absolutely not a central role, but they are the main actor of this process, because they manage the digital resources, they produce the metadata, and we just transform them. So we understand that we need to have a big change pathway from this point of view. So it was really interesting, because as I said previously, we use it to think that our main stakeholders are represented by the final users, and so we pay great attention to them, working to provide a ever big number of content, of resource, etc. But we lost the content provider. So we discussed also using the strategic perspective, another instrument that you can find into the impact playbook. We understand that we could be able to provide to give to content providers some impact innovation, some impact operational, and I will discuss later. Also, some impact social impact. So we understand that we have the power to do that, this thing that we need, of course, to work in order to have the tools, the instruments, the software, etc., to do that. But we were not able to provide these services. So we decided to focus especially not on, and this is the only difference that I can found due to the work carried out by the German digital library. We not focused on the minimum metadata, but we focused especially on the using of the adopting the controlled vocabularies. In Italy, we have a long tradition about the cataloging process, but of course, we are speaking a lot of time of cataloging process that was carried out 15, 14, 13 years ago. And so in a lot of years ago, there was we didn't have some instrument, for example, the Wikidata, the Getty, AAT, etc. So we understand that we need to set up a process for which we got the metadata from the content providers. Then ex post, we can enrich them with the controller vocabulary using specific software, etc. And then we understand that we can give them a really added value. So we can have an impact on the value of their collection, providing the information that they gave us enriched with the terms related to a controlled vocabulary. And this is really useful because in Italy, the multilingualism often we can consider it a sort of barrier. So we can give them the opportunity to show their content in a really easy way, not only in Italian, but also in other languages. So from this point of view, we understand that we can do a lot of things from a technical, let me say this word, from a technical point of view. But at the same time, as I said previously, we understood that we could give also a social impact to this to the content providers. We understood that, as I said, we have a top-bottom approach, a vertical approach, and we were not able over 15 years to build a concrete community. And for this reason, we have some time, let me say, some difficulties in order to enlarge the total amount of the content that we aggregate. So we decided also to rethink the whole portal, the editorial part of the whole portal. At the beginning, I said that we used this space in order to promote event and exhibition that was made under the umbrella of the Italian Ministry of Culture. But we understood that it could maybe it is better if we use this space in order to promote the activity carried out by the content providers, and at the same time we worked a lot also in order to give them a point of reference in order to be informed about the news, the implementation referred to the digital sector, cultural digital sector, of course. So we had this, we decided to implement this new approach. And let me say, I think that this could be really the only way in order to get some concrete achievements also for our aggregation service in order to implement our numbers. But I would like to spend just fine. I have already at the end of my presentation, as I said, concrete tips, easy tips in order to say, give a look to the impact playbook. You can find really some useful tips, information, suggestion. a way to organize your work in a better way. And I would like to spend just a words on a fact that could be sound really strange. Cultura Italia is the portal of the Italian Ministry of Culture, but as I said, due to our approach, we understood that we need to reinforce also internally our approach with the other institution, not only out of the ministry, but also inside the ministry, because you know we have a thousand of museums, a couple of libraries and archives, and we decided to reinforce our links, especially with the thematic aggregators of the ministry, and we started to have a new approach with them, more collaborative, in order to produce an effective effort and provide, last but not least, more useful content for our final users. So from this point of view, we are working with some specific stakeholders, but at the same time, we are providing a better service to another group of our stakeholders, which is represented, of course, by the final users. Unluckily, and this is my last words. Our former director retired last year. We are happy for her, but we lost a really relevant support. Now, luckily, I have to say the new director is highly interested into the European ecosystem. So we are starting again to work on the activities, and of course we are following the guidelines of the impact community. So I can't speak about the assessment phase because we are not still able to produce the software that we need. I hope we started these activities in 2023, and we expect to have the assessment at the end of this year. Probably we will do it at the end of the next year, but I have just to say that before to leave, I want to just share one consideration. Approaching the European impact community not only allowed us to better understand how we can have an impact externally, but we also gave using this approach gave us an idea on how to improve our work. So I warmly suggest to every people today which is listening this meeting to give a look at the impact and try to set up for its organization this kind of activities, because the impact is really and provide you an added value that is what exactly we are looking for working on to the digital cultural sector. And that's all.
Thank you so much. I love that closing remark. It's because you're open, right? You've been doing this with Cultura Italia as a national aggregator for many years. You're doing everything you believe in, right? You're in a mission, and you're doing that with all the passion and love of the people at their institute. At the same time, like looking in the mirror, it may be sometimes also a little bit scary, right? It's not always the easiest thing to
It
do.
was
So thank you also for sharing those
no, but
observations.
it was a discover that we made thanks to the impact. We started to talk, but okay, these are our stakeholder. Okay, we have a European as a stakeholder. Okay, and we work well with the European, following their indication and so on, participating to their activities, etc. Okay, we provide a good service to the final end user because we are improving our numbers, and the content provided. Yeah, we understood that we were missing them and in fact at the end of the year I think that we need to update our content, the list of our content provider, because we lost some of them. It's not a big number, but we have a sort it's a big word, a sort of fan base of people, really, of institutions really that really cares about sharing their cultural heritage. But we must be able to use their enthusiastic approach to provide them concrete outcomes, providing using this in order to have in order to build a stronger community of people interested in this topic. Because my impression is that, okay, you did your work, now it's my turn. No, it doesn't work. And we understood this thanks to the it was an easy talk, but yeah, just a talk among us, but it provided us the opportunity to open our eyes.
Interesting, very interesting, and a good sort of my exercise for everyone to do every now and again. So the content providers at the center, so they will be the heart, right? They will be their focus point. So there will also be adjustments made in your strategic planning for right, for the national aggregator, like putting this at the center of your activities. So immediate impact of these research that you've carried out with a group of enthusiastic colleagues, which of course is also maybe one quick question on that, and then I move to Jason. You said it's crucial that I have a group, and you phrase it very nicely in Italian. Fewer people, but with buy-in. Therefore, did you select the people based on their enthusiasm for the topic, or did you create the buy-in, or how do you create a good and effective group of people to work on a topic? Can you share a little bit about that?
When I started to work, I started, of course, from myself, because I was the promoter of the initiative, and yes, in my role of responsible of project coordinator of Cultura Italia, I can play a significant role. Then I asked the support of one of my colleagues who works with me, and she was enthusiastic, but she's a huge professional, so I knew that of her enthusiastic adhesion to this activity. And then I have another colleague devoted also to the communication, but she come after, when we understand that the relevance to provide the right communication outside of what we are doing, etc. And of course, I need to involve my director. So from a certain point of view, we were 2.5, because, as you know, the director was, of course, supported us, but he can't provide a just. And then we become 3 person and half. So I didn't ask if I checked for the professional that I have in mind, that the professional I need in order to develop the idea that I have at the beginning of the process.
Yes, sounds like that's a good tip for everybody to involve the relevant thing. Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you. I'm gonna hand over now to Jason Evans, National Library Wales. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Would you like to share some slides, or would you talk freely out of the top of your head like Antonio?
I will. I'll share some slides now.
All right. Welcome. Thanks so much. Also.
Great. There we are. Yes. So thanks for having me. I'm Jason Evans. I'm the Open Data Manager at the National Library of Wales. I'm going to be showcasing 2 projects that we've done with the Impact Playbook. One in my role working with Wikimedia projects, and another where I was working on the digital transformation of one of our in-house teams. So the point really of showing you these 2 different case studies is to highlight the flexibility of the Impact Playbook as a set of tools that can be kind of mixed and matched and used however you want to, however suits your projects. And I feel like that's a theme that's been touched upon by the other speakers today already. So a quick disclaimer before I start: I'm not saying that either of these approaches that I'm going to show you are the right way or the wrong way. It's up to you and the situation that you're in as to how you apply the Impact Playbook. And for me, that's one of the great things about it, is its flexibility and the way that you can use it to suit your needs. Okay, so The first case study comes from the Wiki People project, or Wikipobol, as we say in Welsh. So this was a project to enrich Wikimedia projects with information about Welsh people and culture, and to engage people with that content that we were sharing. So we took this idea and we applied the playbook in order to plan the details of what the project should deliver, and then to monitor and measure the impact, and to present the findings in a final report. So we kicked off this process with a workshop, and we invited a range of staff from different disciplines to take part. And the aim of the first workshop was really to identify our stakeholders. And we developed personas for each of these stakeholders, and empathy maps were used to focus on the pains and gains for each of those stakeholder groups. And it was these gains then that we summarized as the potential impacts or changes for each stakeholder group. Now, the idea of developing personas for our users and for our stakeholders is an established practice at the National Library of Wales. I'm not sure it works completely in every situation, and I think if I was to run this project again, I would have workshopped the kind of broad idea of stakeholder groups and then gone and actually spoken to members of those communities and those stakeholders and brought them in to understand the process better. Okay, so once we had identified the key potential impacts for each of our stakeholder groups, we workshopped the best way of achieving these impacts. So we worked from right to left across the change pathways template, starting with the long-term outcomes we would need to realize the impact goals, then the short terms, then the practical outputs, which form the kind of a series of targets for the project, all the way back to the resources that we're going to need to achieve each of these outputs. So you can really kind of plan the entire project using this process. So once we'd been through that process with all of our stakeholders, we were left with this change pathway that has the 4 key stakeholder groups. So we've got the creative industries, education, community, and government, because the project was actually funded by Welsh Government and they had their own set of goals that they wanted to achieve through funding this project. So we included them as a stakeholder, as well as the users that we wanted to engage with as part of this project. And the Welsh Government actually have a really interesting impact framework of their own, which is based around the Future Wellbeing of Future Generations Act in Wales. And it identifies these key areas that you see here on the screen and asks government-funded organisations to feed into these goals. And this actually is a system that really lends itself to working with the impact playbook, because these goals encourage organizations to look beyond traditional metrics, hits on websites, people through the door, and really think about the broader impact on society of the kind of projects that they're funding. So we quite often use these goals to align impacts from the playbook, to align them through to Welsh Government goals. So then we started thinking about how we actually go about measuring and demonstrating the desired impacts. So we actually added 2 new columns to the change pathway. The first to think about what we needed to measure in order to prove impact, and then the actual tools that we would use to do that. So by adding these 2 additional columns, it gives us a really solid framework to follow in order to follow through and identify each of the impacts that we'd identified. So sometimes this meant using metric tools to collect quantitative data, but often the best way of demonstrating these impacts was to ask people questions, to somehow understand their experience of engaging with this work, whether that's a questionnaire or an interview or informal conversations. So some of the key outputs of this project were to create or to share open data about Welsh people and Welsh society, and we used Wikidata as our main platform for doing that. We held a public hackathon to encourage people to use that open data and other data sets from the National Library of Wales. We released digital content to Wikimedia Commons, so we released thousands of digital images of portraits of Welsh people. And we held a series of editathons, so Wikipedia editing events in schools in one part of Wales. So then, following our metrics and impact capturing plan that we had tacked on to the end of the change pathways, we started to look at going about proving these impacts that we felt the project should be generating. So this is an example of a quantitative impact. So this shows the number of users on Welsh Wikipedia over a period of 3 or 4 years. And the area highlighted in green is when the project was active. And that actually shows that more people were active during the period of this project than in any other period in the last few years. So it shows a really clear change as a result of working on this project. And then we set about capturing some of the more qualitative impacts. So with the work we did with schools, for example, the best way of kind of demonstrating the impact that this work had had was by capturing feedback from students. So here we've captured a quote from one of the students, and this was really about kind of building impact stories around the data in order to kind of demonstrate the impacts, because sometimes that's the only way to do it. There is no kind of structured way of collecting this kind of data. And again, taking data from surveys and presenting it in a clear and visual way and with a narrative helps to convey the changes and impacts that aren't easy to demonstrate with traditional metrics. So we asked students to, on the surveys that we sent out, just to write 3 words that described how the events that they took part in made them feel. And then we produced this word cloud, which again just kind of gives a sense of the impact that we're having on those participants in the events. And then we also looked at things like, after a period of time, were they still engaging with this work? So we found out that 46% of pupils that edited Wikipedia at an event in their school went on to edit Wikipedia again within 4 weeks of taking part in that event. And again, that kind of demonstrates that clear retention of editors. It shows that we've clearly had an impact because they continue to contribute to the platform after the event. And then we packaged all of this impact into a nice impact report at the end of the project, which was fed back to our funders so that they could examine it and dig down into the impacts that the project they'd funded had provided. And it's also published on Wikimedia Commons, and anyone can go and have a look at it there if you're interested in that. Okay, so second case study. This is a completely different project to the first one. So like I said at the start, I hope this just kind of highlights the flexibility of the playbook. So I was put in charge of a new team in the library following a restructuring, and I was tasked with producing a series of recommendations for the digital transformation of our inquiry service. So we have a team that answers inquiries and provides information digitally to users. So we wanted to look at that service and how it could be transformed. And I wanted to put the positive impact of the service at the heart of those recommendations. So I decided to use the playbook, or a version of it. So this was the methodology that we developed. So through a series of workshops, the whole inquiries team, there's 12 people in the team, worked together in each of these workshops. And we first identified the main user groups based on staff experience and also from data from our inquiries system, or CRM. And this was all done when COVID rules were still in force. So we decided to go for a fully digital approach with this project. And I know some people are very fond of their post-it notes, but actually I found using Miro and tools like Menti worked amazingly for this, because it was so easy to pull together everyone's feedback at the end of each session and organize it in a way that we could easily kind of refer back to it and extract knowledge from it. So yeah, I found the digital approach really, really useful with this particular project. And we actually used this graphic of this kind of process that we developed in each of the sessions with the team, and we ticked off the completed parts as we went along, because this impact methodology is new to a lot of people within the organization. And so we wanted to make it as clear and as easy as possible for people to follow and understand where we were at within the journey and what the kind of end goal was. So as you can see, part of this is in Welsh. We did carry out all the workshops in Welsh, so all the feedback from our staff is Welsh, unfortunately, but I've translated the rest of the information. So we started by understanding our user groups. So the different groups, the main groups of people using our inquiry service, and you can see here we're looking at casual historians, and we defined who they were, what was important to them, what perhaps wasn't so important to them, and then mapped their user journeys. What are the most common journeys those users go on within our inquiry service? And then we took that information and we used the empathy map. So we use this to really try and understand things that our users felt, things that they saw and did and thought whilst engaging with our inquiry service. And then move on to document the pains and the gains for our users. So for me, the empathy map was really useful in this for working out the current impacts for our inquiries team, the gains essentially, and the areas for new potential impact, which is the pains in this case. So we then took that data, we moved to the value proposition canvas, which is another tool that's part of this suite of tools that we call the Impact Playbook. So on the right, we summarized the pains and the gains identified in the empathy map workshop. And then on the left, we thought about what products and services would be needed to relieve those pains and to create new gains or impacts as part of any transformation of the service. And the final step was the change pathway. And I would say that almost any part of the Impact Playbook is optional or interchangeable, but the change pathway is probably the one thing I would say is the essential core element of the Impact Playbook. The whole model kind of revolves around the change pathways. So our impacts for this work were those Welsh Government Wellbeing of Future Generation Act goals that we had identified that I spoke about earlier on. The long and short-term outcomes were those gains and pain relievers that we had identified through the workshops. And we discussed as a team the activities and the outputs that would be needed to achieve those outcomes. So again, most of this is in Welsh, but I actually experimented with a color-coded system here for this change pathway. So the colors of the short and long-term outcomes match the impacts that they are linked to, so that you can kind of clearly see which of those activities link to which particular impacts. And then the little black and white symbols that you see denote the type of impact measurement that would be needed to demonstrate the impacts for each of those outcomes. So again, this is just kind of adding your own take, customizing this change pathway to kind of suit your needs. So there are 3 types of metrics that we identified: statistics from our website and from the inquiries CRM, for more sort of quantitative feedback, and then questionnaires and verbal feedback from users to capture more qualitative impacts. And the third type of impact of collection method was tagging. So our inquiries system allows you to tag, have a series of tags that you can apply to each inquiry based on the topic of the inquiry or the type of outcome that users have had as a result of that inquiry. And we proposed developing a series of tags that allowed us to kind of monitor the types of impacts that were being achieved through answering different inquiries. So this change pathway contains clear recommendations on how the service can be transformed, and we fed this back to senior management. And interestingly, one of the biggest learnings, I think, from these workshops was that a lot of great impact already exists in this service, but those impacts weren't being captured. And they were things that in some cases we hadn't even thought about before this process. So yeah, a lot of the kind of feedback in terms of what we needed to do differently was actually we just need to measure the impacts in a more structured and clear way and present that back to funders, to management in a way that's impactful in itself. So a few closing thoughts. Bend the playbook to your needs. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And the way that you apply it will inevitably depend on the time and the resources and the skill set that you have available for that particular task. I feel like we still struggle with the longer term impact measurement. And I think that's very much a symptom of this culture of short-term one-off projects. And I'd love to see a culture shift there to more long-term workflows that sort of map out the impact over longer term and provide those opportunities to capture input longer after activities have ended. And I think that's where the change pathways and impact playbook is so useful for mapping out these work packages, whether it is a simple kind of task and finish activity or a 10-year strategy cycle. There's so much flexibility within this. You can use the playbook for all of it. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks so much. I like what you said about the sort of long-term impact, because you very deliberately chose two different ways of how we can all use the playbook. And for the second one, the second example of the digital transformation of one of your sort of departments or your activities, like a core activity that the library, the National Library of Wales, that any library is offering to its users, right? So from that perspective, measuring the impact now, but also that is something that sort of you can embed as a sort of continuous activity within and adopt that in your way of working. And I like that as a sort of idea that how we can look at the playbook. It's not like we measure impact as a one-off for an interesting project that we've executed and what were the outcomes, but similarly for Stephanie's talk right now, what will the impact be on museums providing their digital collections more strategically to Deutsche Digitaalbibliotheek and Europeana. So that long-term value, I think, sort of equally is very important in how we can sort of adopt a change in our own culture and how we look at it.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm thinking of myself, I'm working for a library in the Netherlands, right? So what does it mean for our organization if I would come to the conclusion that we need to sort of structurally measure this set of activities and its impact on the organization and how we do our work? And how can I find a valuable way to feed this back also to my decision makers and policy and change makers in the sector in the Netherlands, but also in my own organization. I think that's a very valid point there you were just
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of feel like, we develop these 5-year strategies or 10-year strategies as organizations, and then we run projects that broadly fit within those strategies. And it's almost like we should be using the impact playbook at that strategy level as well as the project level. So we use it to structure and capture impacts from individual projects, but then that feeds back into a larger impact model that we have for the entire strategy. And I think that's the part that's missing at times at the moment.
As a very experienced user, as a member of our steering group, but also as an experienced user of the playbook in that sense, what would you think would be for people who start to think about, hey, I might want to use this, but I'm looking a little bit like, maybe it's a bit much to deal with all at once. What do you think would be sort of a good starting point to get the gist of it and to sense out, and that's realistic and will not be too time consuming, to just set your baby steps in the world of the impact measurement?
Yeah, I think that change pathway is the key thing, and I think you can develop those without any of the kind of the other tools around it if you want to, because it just forces you to think backwards almost from here's what we want to achieve, how do we achieve it? So I think you could, that would be a great kind of way of getting involved. Just have that in front of you as an individual or as a small team of people in your organization, and just map something out, and then you'll find yourself turning to all the excellent tools and stuff that there are to help you along the way in no time, I'm sure.
Cool. I love it, because then it's easy and adoptable, and you can just maybe already identify some quick wins that you can think of. There's a question for you in the chat, Jason. The question is, how representative are the people that take the trouble of making a request to the total audiences that use your services?
Right. How representative? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. If we could, I don't know if there's any more.
And there's not more information at the moment, so I think it refers to the digital transformation within your department. So, and people inquiring. I'm just making this up now, so I hope that the person who asked types some further information in the chat. And so we have, and the library, many people use our services. At the same time, there's only a selected number of people who actually make the trouble to make a request, while many of the usage are happening sort of automatically, whether they're happy or content, if their needs are met or not. So the person who asked the question is wondering sort of how representative do we look at the people who actually reached out to you to ask a question.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we can only understand the point of view of those that get in touch with us, and we can make guesses as to what other people might want, or we can look at other platforms with the inquiries. For example, we know a lot of people that get in touch are people that are doing their family history, so we can look at other forums where people are working on their family history and sharing information to kind of get a sense of the services that they might be interested in. But it's very difficult, and I think in order to do this effectively, you need to reach as broad an audience and potential audience as possible, but that's not always easy.
No, it's not. I'm just thinking of our mechanisms within the library, and the vocal ones and the silent majority in that sense, right? So thank you for that. Then I'd like to open the floor for our participants to ask more questions to our 3 panelists, who would want to thank a lot for their excellent contribution and really showed the right range of how you can actually use. And that was the whole idea. How can you use the impact playbook in your work? And at a scale, or maybe at project level. So I was wondering, and I'm going to ask the question to the three of you. Were there any sort of unexpected findings that you thought, I never thought that this making the pathway for the first time, think, oh, this was really something that we never envisaged and was such an eye-opener. So I don't know who thinks automatically, hey, there's something in there for me.
I think in terms of the type of feedback that you ask for from users is very much shaped by the kind of building your change pathway and everything. And I think you ask questions that you might not have asked otherwise, and that can lead to some really interesting responses. And I know when we did some work in schools with in primary schools with very young children, and we asked them to feedback how they felt about the project to build those word clouds like I showed you. And on one of the projects we did, there was a lot of anxiety evident in the feedback we were getting. So they were saying, you know, yes, it was fun and all the rest of it, but there were kids definitely saying, oh, this was a bit scary actually, or yeah, I was a bit frightened I didn't know what to do. And I think that was quite interesting. And then that's useful because you can build on that then once you've got that feedback. Yeah, but more broadly, I just think, you know, as I've kind of highlighted, that when I first started using the playbook, it didn't occur to me that it would be able to be used in such a broad range of circumstances. And the more you kind of experiment with it and play with it, you think, okay, yeah, you know, that kind of fear of doing it wrong melts away, and you realize that there's lots of different applications for this.
Thanks, Jason. Any other thoughts, Stephanie, Antonio, Davide?
Yeah, what I want to share is just yeah, the easy experience, how we get to know how to work with the playbook and how easy we dived into it. So yeah, that was perfect. And I mean, there's this glossary that explains everything well, and that would be also my recommendation to others who wants to work with the playbook. Just dive into the phase one. Also, as Jason said, the change pathway is a perfect inspiration. And also the empathy map. Yeah, conducting these interviews with our stakeholder group, the software providers. Yeah, it helped us to get into touch about all these yeah, recommendations that were already published, but what is it exactly what they want? And therefore the empathy map helped us. Yeah.
Nice. Davide, anything from your end that you think, oh,
Yeah,
I wish I knew that before?
as usual, I have a different point of view. I try to my colleagues say the right things, and I totally agree with them. But I would like to add just a different thing, and this: don't discourage yourself if it is not clear after the first 3 pages, the phase one, because it is explained very well. Because after that you are in touch at the fifth page, you understand everything, and it will be easy to understand the sense of the impact activities. So as they said, it is really don't be afraid to get in touch with something of different, because as I said before, I think that into the impact we can find the really added value of our activities. I think that this is the key that you have to keep in mind in order to say, okay, why must I afford these? I have already my activities and so on. So this is my 2 cents about the rest. Yes, after for example, as I said, the first page is okay, but after the phase 2, the phase 3 that I read, of course, carefully, are absolutely, after that you have set up your mind to the topic, it will be really easy. So yeah, it is a very good work.
Thank you so much. And I think that's actually a good roundup of what we've been discussing today. Don't be afraid, adopt it, and once you've adopted it, then be like Jason and you use it all the time. You think, hey, you get a sort of mindset in thinking of impact when you're actually doing your work and where you see areas for development. I think we're all like but regardless of your position in your institute or your organization that you work for, you can adopt sort of methodology in your mind to think, hey, but how can we either further this service, or how can we broaden this service, how can we do this with a societal impact, and also maybe for cultural heritage institutes to think, okay, it's not only about the number game, it's about the impact stories, like what Jason was mentioning just now. It's like, where can we make a real difference? So on that note, my dear speakers, thank you so much for sharing and openly sharing your thoughts. Oh, there was one question in the chat. Will we be sharing your slides? Is that okay for us to do that?
Happy
yeah, Jason
to
says yes,
share.
Stephanie
Yeah.
says yes, great. So thank you so much. So we will be sharing the recording of today, but also the slides of Jason and Stephanie. And I would like to ask Tamara, there was one last slide that I wanted to show, because the impact community will do some interesting activities later on in this year. We will do some impact surgeries that we will report on in December. And of course, there is a European aggregated forum outreach event that will also be at the end of this year. The date is not yet set yet. So be on the watch for those type of activities. And then last but not least, big thank you. And if you want to join our communities, feel free to do so. You can find all the information right here. And if you want to get in touch with any one of us, all our contact details are on the Europeana Pro network page. So feel free to reach out. Also, one last call to action. If you are adopting, if you're using the impact playbook in your own work, and you please share it with us, because we're very keen to hear how it was for you to use it, but also what the outcomes of that were, and we can report on that on behalf of Europeana to a wider audience and inspire others, what we aimed and tried to do today. So a big thank you to everyone, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.